Hello, this is OverlordBou, and we're back with another ship review, and today we'll be looking at the new Tier 9 Royal Navy battleship, the Marlborough. This ship will be in the upcoming or current Dockyard event. You can grind for it during then and pay roughly around 5,000 doubloons to do the final stage to get in the end. We'll have to see, they haven't told me the price at this point. But today I'll be talking about the ship and why I would not recommend it. And I'll be going over why in the video. So let's look at the hull real quick. So the hull has a 32mm bow with the little armor plate right there, 51mm, and it has the same on the aft end with the 51. It has a citadel protection of 381 armor and 261 here. Deck armor of 32. Take this off right here. As you can see, it has a pretty thick little citadel right there. But definitely be careful because the citadel is very high out of the water, and you will get citadeled if you are not careful. So let's look over the build. So on the Marlborough, I have main armament, DCP-1, aiming systems, rudder shift, concealment, and a main battery reload. Now for the commander, I would run gun feeder, demolition expert, emergency repair, grease the gears, brisk, fire prevention, concealment, base survivability, adrenaline rush is what I would build for the captain. And I'll explain why during the video. Now, without further ado, while the replay goes, we will then talk about the ship stats and such. All right. So the Marlborough has 76,800 HP with a 32mm bow and stern with a 32mm deck. It also has a 38mm and 152mm belt armor. Now the ship does have a similar armor layout to the Conqueror, but with thinner belt armor. Now it does also have a above water citadel, which is very vulnerable to citadeling, so you definitely need to watch out for that. Now the ship does have a 24% torpedo protection system, which is very nice. It's about average. But sorry, it's actually I take that back. It's actually very poor. I forgot. It's very poor. Second worst at her tier, the torpedo protection. So would not recommend that for eating torpedoes. Now the ship has an average HP pool, extremely vulnerable citadel due to the high position, overall weak armor scheme, as much of her 32mm is easily penetrated. Now, due to all this, the ship has a somewhat mediocre survivability. While her HP pool is typical, her poor armor renders her vulnerable to concentrated attacks, unlike her Royal Navy BB counterparts. She does not get a super heal like her other BB counterparts like the Conqueror, the Lion, and such. Her citadel is also very high, so you need to take great care when exposing your broadside, because you do not want to get citadeled in this ship. You will suffer horribly. Now for the main guns. Now there are 4 quad 356 45 guns and an ABXY layout with a 25 base second reload and a 45 second turret traverse. Now you can fire broadside at 47 degrees to the rear and 40 degrees off the bow, which is very poor gun angles. It does have a base range of 20.9 kilometer base range, and it has a sigma of 1.4. Whew. Now, it has the same guns and shells as the King George V, but with some shell differences. The Marlborough's HE shells has only a 24% fire chance, significantly worse than the KGV's 41%. Marlborough's AP has the normal fuse time, while the KGV has the RN short arming fuse, and everything else is the same. Now the AP shells has the lowest penetration of all tier 9 battleships. The ship also has terrible gun angles. She pretty much has to show broadside to fire all of her guns, which puts her in a very vulnerable state. It does have the highest theoretical damage output. It pretty much has the highest theoretical damage output, but balanced out by her awful accuracy. And it does also have the fastest reloading, it is the fastest reloading BB at her tier. Now, the Marlborough is an interesting gun platform, having 16 guns and a very fast reload, but it's held back by literally everything else. The poor dispersion means most of her rounds won't hit the target at long range, but also makes it harder for the enemy to completely dodge her salvo. Now, her HE fire chance was initially nerfed to prevent her from being broken, though she still is the best fire starter among the BBs. Marlborough's main issue is her turret angles. She is forced to show broadside to fire all of her guns. And this, combined with a vulnerable citadel, players have to be very careful about timing their shots to avoid a deadly retaliation strike and getting death struck. Now for the secondaries. The secondaries are 8x twin 133mm 45 guns with a 6.95 kilometer range. It's nothing really remarkable. They have the normal secondary accuracy, but so obviously don't invest in them. Now for depth charge airstrikes, it can store up to 3 charges. The depth charges do 3,000 damage per depth charge and are 4 depth charges per attack run. Now, 75-second reload time and 10 kilometer range for the depth charges. They're the same as the tier 9 Lion, so they're fairly good due to the higher damage and getting 3 flights, though the range can be an issue. Now for the anti-air. For the anti-air, there is 1 flak explosion in the inner, outer, and mid. So this ship has very poor outer anti-air due to only having 1 flak out. That is very poor. So though her mid-range AA is strong, in practice, this only means the majority of her planes kills are scored after they've already dropped their ordnance. In other words, her AA won't stop strikes from getting through, so her AA overall isn't very effective. Now for maneuverability. For maneuverability, the Marlborough has a top speed of 31.5 knots base. In this, I believe I got to about 38 knots, I believe, in this video. I don't recommend exactly, but with Swift and Silence and the speed flag, I get around 38 or 39 knots. It does have an 860 meter turning circle with a 16.8 rudder shift time. Though overall fast, she is only average among the tier 9 BBs. Relatively tight turning radius among the tier 9 BBs though. It does also have a mediocre or average rudder shift time. So overall, the Marlborough's maneuverability is above average among her peers. That being said though, her mediocre rudder shift may hurt her angling ability as she swings her guns around and tries to avoid showing her broadside for too long. Now let's talk about concealment. So for base, the ship has a 14.9 sea base with 11.9 kilometer air base, and then it has a 12.1 and 9.7 respective for building into concealment. Now the smoke fire penalty is 13.4 kilometers. Now this is the second lowest surface detection among tier 9 BBs. It is a very stealthy BB, on par or even exceeding many cruisers. The concealment helps it a lot in its positioning closer, so her guns inaccuracy at long distance is less of an issue. So you can always use that to be stealthy if you'd like. Now for the consumables. Now it has a standard DCP with infinite charges, an 80-second reload, and 15-second immunity to fires and floods. Now it does have a standard repair heal and does not have a super heal like its other BB counterparts. Now, of course, you do the standard BB consumable loadout, though it's lacking planes. So my overall impression. So my overall impression of this ship is that it is a low skill floor and average skill stealing ship. In randoms, I would say it's random, more of a kiting cruiser It can farm damage, but not as good when aggressive, as you'll see later in the video. In rank, the ship is mediocre due to her lacking the reliable AP power that other BBs possess. She cannot deal with other BBs immediately effective with the AP, which leading to less play-making capabilities. Now for clan battles. I feel the ship is very poor. She lacks the durability and AP required of a BB to be able to do long distance dev strikes or snipes across the map, and it's also not a very tanky ship. She's essentially a cruiser taking up a BB slot if you want to think of her like that. So let's talk a little bit more about the Marlborough. So again, the Marlborough is the tier 9 BB available in her respective Dockyard event, which are coming out in the new 10.11 patch, or is currently out during the Dockyard event. Now, while she is classified as a BB, she definitely plays more like a typical kiting cruiser, or kind of like other RMBBs due to her poor durability in the HE spam you put out in this ship. Her restrictive turret angles and poor gun accuracy and the poor shell performance often makes her guns very frustrating to use. I've had multiple times where I've tried to set fires, or I've tried to get shots, but the gun angles were just too poor. I just couldn't hit anything over and over again. It was just a disaster. Even though it is compensated by a very high rate of fire and the number of guns, it just caused a lot of issues in the end. So to maximize her gun's effectiveness, the Marlborough should ideally be under 12 kilometers, where her accuracy is less of an issue. But the problem is, though, if you're that close shooting your guns, you're going to be showing your broadside to a lot of ships if you're trying to get all the guns going. So you definitely have to be careful with showing too much broadside. And also, you do not want to underestimate Marlborough's AP, as it's still effective against broadside ships, even with lower pan like you saw for that cruiser earlier. Like, broadside cruisers especially should be wary of your alpha strike, because you can just easily just dev strike them with how much like alpha damage you're putting down the range. Like, overall, the Marlborough is an okay kiting ship, but relatively boring to play despite having 16 guns. And again, as I said earlier, I would not recommend the Marlborough. But if you want to get it by buying the bare amount of stages, which cost around 5,000 or 7,000 doubloons, I think, 7 or 6,000 doubloons, 5 or 6,000 blues usually. You can get the ship. You can get pretty much a cheap tier 9 battleship and the awards from the Dockyard ship as pretty much as you're grinding down the line naturally. So that's like my only recommendation for this ship. But again, I would not recommend this ship for the playstyle. It's not really effective in ranked. It's not effective in clan battles, and it's about average for randoms. If you want to have a really fast firing tier 9 BB that suffers when it gets close or suffers from not being able to do damage, then so be it. But I would not recommend this as for someone to like go up and just buy. It's something that if this was a regular ship and not a Dockyard ship, I wouldn't recommend it pretty much at all to buy. But since it is a Dockyard ship where it's very cheap to get it in the end, I would see it more like just to get a cheap tier 9 BB just to be able to grind your captains on. That's literally it, or some credit farming is the only way I could see it. Because other than that, I couldn't really see myself ever recommending this ship to anyone outside of that. The ship is just very squishy, very terrible gun angles, and the gun accuracy really hurts this ship overall. Makes it really, really suffer for sure. And as you saw here, I was being too aggressive in my push, and I just got farmed out very quickly. So, now let's look over the stats for the match. In the match, I did 139,000 damage. I got 445,000 credits. I got 2 kills. I got about 10 fires. There's a lot of fires, yeah. But again, you gotta think that this match is also a lower tier match, when I've tried playing this ship in a tier 8, 9, and 10 match, normally, sorry, when I play this ship in a tier 9 or 10 match, it really suffered against those bigger AP shells from like tier 10 battleships. So, I just wanted to make that very clear. But again, this is OverlordBou. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely leave them down in the comments down below. And yep, thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for your time. But yep, see you guys in the next one. Oh, big stretch, dude. Oh, big stretch, yeah.